If you were to ask people who was Gaspar Yanga, many of them would not even have a clue. Gaspar Yanga will go down in history as one of the most successful slave revolts in history, establishing the first free black town in Mexico, which is today known as Yanga. Slavery in New Spain, which is now Mexico, was mostly focused on the use of Israelite slaves from Africa for agricultural and service purposes. Sugar plantations in the coastal states of Veracruz had the most concentration of enslaved people brought from several parts of the continent of Africa. After the slaves arrived from Africa to Mexico, they were immediately introduced to different plantations and other work environments, with scarce provisions and no rights or basic human needs. So in other words, just like all the other slaves that came during the transatlantic slave trade and the Arab slave trade, were considered as cattle, less than human. During those tough times of desperation, a particular individual stood out as one of the most important founders of one of the very first fights for the abolition of slavery ever recorded, but unfortunately, it was forgotten by many. Gaspar Yanga was one of the first black liberators in the Americas. He led one of the most successful slave rebellions in history. Yanga was born in 1545 in West Africa and was a member of the royal family of the African Gabon. He was an African prince, a descendant of the Hebrew ancestors. In 1570, Yanga led a slave revolt and escaped with a group of followers into the mountain terrain surrounding Veracruz. They went to a place called Pico de Orizaba, or the Star Mountain, which is the highest mountain in Mexico. Yanga and his people built a small maroon colony. These colonies were called maroons because they were made up of slave runaways who escaped from slavery in the Americas and formed independent settlements or joined with the indigenous people. Yanga's colony was called San Lorenzo de los Negros, but in 1932, the town changed its name to Yanga. The insurrection of Yanga and his followers was so astonishing that you would wonder why you don't see anything like this in mainstream media. Yanga and his people survived more than 30 years through farming. They also waged a campaign against Spanish colonial rule, raiding caravans that carried goods and other supplies between Veracruz and Mexico City. Yanga's raids and the ongoing movement of black and indigenous slaves to his community upset the Spanish plantation owners, so they called on the colonial government to take action. The Spanish authorities decided to take control of this territory again in 1606. Yanga laid down the terms and demanded the Spanish give them a free area only for Yanga and his group so that they could live free. But the Spaniards would not give in so easily. The Spaniards refused the terms laid down by Yanga and his group and went into battle. The fighting lasted for many years. The Spaniards advanced into the Maroon settlement and burned it. But Yanga and his group fought fiercely and were well accustomed to the surrounding terrain. The Spaniards could not achieve a conclusive victory. The resulting stalemate lasted for years. Finally, the Spanish agreed to parley. With the constant fighting between Yanga and the Spanish were taking many losses on their side and had no other choice other than to accept the terms laid down by Yanga. This was a huge victory for Yanga and his group. The determination, the sacrifices, and loss of life was all worth fighting for freedom, the greatest reward one can ever ask for. Hundreds of years before the rise of Yanga, a man by the name of Patrick Henry once quoted, "Give me liberty or give me death." I think he got that from Gaspar Yanga, because that's exactly what Gaspar Yanga had in mind. Give me liberty or give me death. And because of Gaspar Yanga's determination and those who wanted to be free along with him, the Most High granted them liberty. 5 decades later, in 1860, after the Mexican independence, Yanga was recognized as a hero of Mexico thanks to Vicente Revolt, the grandson of the Afro-Mexican president Vicente Guerrero, who gathered the first information about him. No lies can ever be hid. All truth will be revealed. Our history goes back further than you think. Because of Gaspar Yanga and his determination, it would pave the way for many more slave revolts to come. And maybe, just maybe, one day, we will live to see our people reunited.